We're live now.
Yep.
Okay,
So, Mrs. Liu, if I may begin.
great.
This special meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2520, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. The Board of Education will conduct this special meeting as a teleconference. Please use the following toll-free number and meeting ID to call into the meeting. Telephone 669900-9128, meeting ID 859-0313-8282, password 895739. Or you may join on a computer by visiting TUSD.org and going under the board meeting agenda for the link. Public comments can be submitted prior to 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting by completing the appropriate submission form on our website under quick links. Participants must be logged into the meeting via the Zoom link published above or by dialing in. Your participant Zoom name or your Zoom participant name or phone number must match the name or phone number entered on the form so that you may be accurately identified and let into the room. The guidelines for public comment will be in accordance with Board Policy 2350. Reasonable accommodation for any individual with a disability will be at a request through my office. We did not receive any, and so we have none at this time. So that is it for me, Mrs. Liu. So back to you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Stowe. I think it's not listed on the agenda, but let's have the Dr. Mohammed do the Pledge of Allegiance. Can you lead us, please?
Thank you, President Liu. Pledge allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Item number 3, adoption of the agenda. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda for this meeting?
I move that we adopt the agenda. Second.
Okay, on favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, none opposed, motion passes. Moving on to, before we go to number 4, I want to explain that I called the special meeting in light of the new memo from Dr. Barbara Furr, the director of the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. The memo released just yesterday states that the Department of Public Health, quote, strongly recommends that all TK and 12 schools in the county suspend in-person student instruction, services, and activities during the month of January as much as possible. Therefore, we are having this special emergency meeting on a Saturday. Thank you all for attending. And now we'll have our superintendent, Dr. Stowe, read the memo in its entirety and make a presentation about the memo and take any public comments. And then we'll have a discussion among the board members afterwards. Dr. Stowe, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mrs. Liu, and members of the board. Thank you so much for the work that you have done throughout and continue to do in calling this meeting on a Saturday to hear the concerns of the community and to present and to discuss among yourself in light of this new memo that came out that we heard about on Thursday, but received at 6:09 last night. And I have asked that this letter in its letter itself as a PDF be attached to the board meeting agenda. But at this time, I'm just going to read the letter so that you know, that people maybe have not had a chance to see it, can understand the context. The LA County Department of Public Health strongly recommends that TK through 12 schools in the county suspend in-person student instruction, services, and activities during the month of January as much as possible. For the remainder of the month, on-campus activities should be limited to implementation of distance learning, food distribution, and other minimum essential operations. Child care for school-aged children may continue to occur at school sites to support the needs of essential workers who do not have the option to stay home. In-person support for high-need students should be limited to those necessary services and assessments that cannot be delivered virtually and cannot reasonably be postponed until February. Similarly, employees who can perform their duties virtually should be encouraged and assigned to telework to the extent possible. In-person meetings for staff are strongly discouraged and should be moved to virtual platforms. This strong recommendation comes in response to the unprecedented surge in COVID-19 cases in the County of Los Angeles and the state of California that began in November and worsened considerably during the month of December. We have not yet seen the full impact of the travel and social gatherings that occurred during the end of the year holidays, which will manifest itself later this month and likely add to the current overburden on our hospitals and emergency departments. The diminishing capacity of our healthcare system to care for the most severely ill among us is at a crucial juncture, and we must all do what we can to mitigate this trend. The best way to accomplish that is for all Angelenos to remain home as much as possible and limit their social interactions to their immediate household members. This recommendation for schools is intended to support this strategy. In addition, as community transmission continues to soar, all schools will encounter an increasing number of cases in their staff and students. The public health order that requires school closure for 2 weeks whenever an outbreak occurs, 3 or more epidemiologically linked cases within 14 days, remains in effect, limiting all on-campus activities for the next 3 weeks until the end of the month will avoid the inevitable disruption that will affect many of your facilities. The last paragraph is for schools that have not yet received TK through 2 waivers, so that does not apply to us. But that's the content of it. You know, the main point here is, you know, in conversation is about what are we doing currently, and how does this this new order affect us? So at this point in time, I would like to go through a brief presentation and share with you an update of the programs that are occurring. And so you are well aware of this. We presented information beginning back in late August, early September, with our plan for how we would phase the return of students onto campus following the county health orders that allowed it, and how we would do it safely. And I believe that it's evidence that we have done it safely. It's been a collective effort of certificated and classified staff, parents, the support of the entire community to make this happen. And we have, I think, done some very good work for our students in the community to be able to bring them back and bring them back safely. So here is a graph of a chart of the number of students that were returned for special education and academic support. So we have roughly 3,000 students in special education as an entire district. We brought back only those most severe students that need support and additional, you know, whether that's interventions for their health and safety, to be able to teach them in a way. There are a lot of our most severe students, visually impaired, for example, orthopedically impaired, that are back on campuses. And so we have 204 students in 48 different cohorts on our campuses, and they have been there since late September and early October. In addition, we have academic support cohorts. These are students in foster care, or some of our homeless students, or others who have difficulty accessing whether it's technology or the wireless infrastructure to be able to do their school at home, or just lack the support at home for them to be able to learn. And so we've got 53 cohorts across our district and 547 students being served there. In addition to special ed and other academics, we've got what we were very proud of most recently, and that is a return of our TK, K, and first grade students. Next slide, please, Gil. And we've got over 1,600 students that have returned. We had TK and K return on December 7th. So they have been completed 3 weeks now. And then our first grade students returned just on Monday. And we have, again, 43 different classrooms of students there that came back. And that was, I know for parents and teachers and everyone, very exciting to be able to have those students back on campus. In addition to the TK and K in first grade, we have, as you well know, since September 27th or September 28th, I think was the first day that the board had approved for groups to be on campus for athletic conditioning and skill work in compliance with DPH orders. And so we've had over 2,000 students on campus, not every day. Some sports and programs have gone maybe twice a week, others 4 days a week. But this includes not just students on campus, but also at the George Mannon Aquatic Center, where we've had our swim and water polo programs doing conditioning and skill work in compliance with all DPH orders. Our dashboard that went live in early December also reports to the community the number of confirmed cases for both staff and students, number of students on our various campuses, and then this is just a screenshot of it, but if you go to TUSD.org and at the very top click on the COVID-19 link, it takes you to this dashboard. And then at the bottom of the page, it keeps a cumulative total of the number of cases that we have had since the beginning of the year. And that is very minimal. And we have, as you are well aware, been visited by the Department of Public Health. Every site has at least once been visited by DPH staff to confirm and verify all of our protocols and practices that we've put in place. And we're proud that they have given us nothing but glowing remarks, and in fact, Dr. Ferrer herself has spoken very highly of schools in general in providing safe places where the protocols are followed. But given the new recommendations from Dr. Ferrer, we are asking tonight for direction from the board as it relates to 6 different items with our students on campus. And so those 6 different programs, if you will, we are the TKK1 in-person instruction that we have recently begun. Our self-contained, most severe special education students, roughly 200 of them that are back, and how we handle those. Assessments, both for special education and our EL for English learner assessments that are required by law. And we have certain timelines that we need to meet for providing these assessments on campus, or providing the assessments. Most of those need to be in person. Our academic support cohorts, these are the students in homeless foster and other high needs populations that we're serving on campus. Our athletic conditioning programs, and then finally, this is a one-day thing, and this is on January 26th. It's a voluntary opportunity for students in the 11th grade to take the PSAT. And the College Board requires this to be done in person on campus and on a specific date. And so given that date falls within this window, we added this bullet. We are planning to, again, following the DPH protocols of no more than 12 students in a room, bring students on campus safely to be able to administer this PSAT on each of our 4 high schools. And roughly about 800 students in total, 700 students in total among the 4 campuses. So, so we would like now for, allowing for public comment and then board discussion. And obviously we have quite a bit of information that we could share with questions that you may have regarding these direction on these 6 items.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe. Did we receive item number 5? Did we receive any public comments?
Yes.
Dr. Mara have them?
Right. So if you want to read the instructions to the public, or I'm happy to read them.
I can read them.
Okay.
Under public comments, 5.1, instructions to the public. Public comments are limited to topics on the special meeting agenda. Speakers wishing to address the board must complete the appropriate submission form on the district website at www.tusd.org/BOE/board meetings under quick links prior to 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. Public comments on agenda items are permitted 3 minutes per topic. Total time granted for public input shall be limited to 30 minutes per topic. And now for any public comments coming in.
So I believe we have at least 12 speakers, and Mr. Mara will facilitate that. He'll call their name, unmute them, and then they can come in and speak. And then I believe Dr. Gerson is going to be the timekeeper.
Correct.
Okay. All right, I'll call on your name. If you hear your name, I'll allow you to speak, so you can go ahead and mic up. I'm doing a search by your last name, so if I don't see you here, then that means you're not logged on with your name. So the first person I found was Pete McKellar. So go ahead, Mr. McKellar.
Hello, Dr. Stowe on the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a parent of a high school swimmer. I've been very appreciative that my daughter has been able to work out at the George Mannon Aquatic Center for the past few months. Strict COVID-19 protocols have been in place to maintain the safety of the students. As you know, the county has allowed swimming limited to 1 swimmer per lane. To my knowledge, I have not heard of 1 case of COVID-19 being contracted from the pool or the other swimmers. The swimmers, coaches, and parents are adhering to all the measures set forth by the county for the health and safety of everyone. I urge you to consider sports continue their conditioning. In addition to maintaining and improving my daughter's physical fitness, the ability to swim has had a positive effect on my daughter's mental health. Being able to exercise 3 times a week in a safe environment after 5 to 6 hours of daily screen time has been paramount in maintaining her quality of life. Thank you for your time.
Next person I have is Sutina Lee. Go ahead, Sutina.
Tina, you're muted if you're speaking.
Yeah, go ahead and unmute. There you go.
Okay. Dear members of the board, thank you for your advocacy and hard work in order to open schools. I know this latest message from Dr. Ferrer must feel like an ambush and an incredibly frustrating setback to all the plans and contingency plans that you had decided on only a few weeks ago. But I implore you to instead view it as a call to action to serve our community. With our hospitals nearing the breaking point and the surge showing signs of becoming worse before becoming better, schools can help communicate the urgency of public health's message to stay at home as much as possible by closing down campuses for 3 weeks. It is no longer a question of whether students and staff are safe inside schools. The situation has deteriorated so rapidly that all activities involving other people carry much greater risk. This closure of schools is a measure of last resort to communicate to our families that life cannot continue as normal right now. Keeping schools open contributes to a feeling of normalcy that could encourage people to make much riskier choices, such as gathering for play dates and birthday parties. We cannot control other people's choices, but we can ask families to pledge not to gather with anyone outside their household and to be honest about COVID symptoms, exposures, and testing results. Our most important safety protocols depend on the trust that others are being responsible. Other districts have started to introduce consequences for breaching this trust, and I ask that TUSD consider doing so as well. Schools are more than a building in which to hold classes. They are the heart of our communities. We must work together as a community to limit the spread of the virus during this critical time and hold each other accountable. Our healthcare workers are exhausted, and the only way we can support them is to stay at home as much as possible. In terms of reopening after the 3-week shutdown, I suggest we stop trying to recreate school as normal for the next 3 months. We don't know what the new guidance will be, and it's a stressful experience for families, teachers, and administrators every time we have to adapt. Let us ask ourselves what is really important. A tiny percentage of our students being inside a classroom for a few hours a day, subject to ever-changing restrictions and uncertainty, or safety, stability, equity, and mental health. We must think beyond the classroom to relieve the burden our families and especially our children are carrying. I suggest we return to only serving the special education and academic support cohorts daily in person and continue with online instruction 4 days a week for everyone else. We can allow each regular classroom cohort to come to campus 1 day a week so that as many students as possible will be able to have some in-person interaction in a controlled environment. Meeting once a week in person would allow for continuity of instruction to continue. Sorry.
Thank you. That's 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, next I have Kristen Antwater. Go ahead, Kristen.
Good afternoon. I first want to start by thanking you all for serving our community and the integrity you bring to your position. The board has always been very open about following the DPH recommendations, and I hope that you will continue to do that in these circumstances as well. Getting back to some semblance of normalcy is contingent on everyone doing their part. And I fully agree with the speaker who came before me. I think she had a lot of very important points. And then to add to that, hindsight, I know, is always 20/20, but it is clear now that Dr. Gerson's concerns, that he was very accurate and justified in wanting to wait to bring back first grade after the winter break. Unfortunately, we haven't followed that advice, and now we're in the unfortunate position of uprooting those first graders and changing their lives again. So I implore you to wait until it is truly safe for everyone involved, and that's students, parents, teachers, staff, administration, to return to school when hospitals have the resources and staff to care for patients. We know that protocols do work when they're followed and enforced. Unfortunately, we're relying on the honor system to make sure that families are doing that. And even when kids are in school, I have young children, they try to keep their mask on, but they don't always wear it correctly. And I just don't trust that TUSD will be able to enforce the protocols with small kids indoors. And I appreciate the dashboard that you guys have implemented. I think it is a great resource of information. Unfortunately, I think there's some missing information because I've heard of schools and cohorts being closed due to COVID exposures, and yet that's not listed. So in the interest of transparency, I think it would be very helpful if we knew which schools were closed and for how long. The Torrance community is looking to you for leadership. And I know this is a very difficult time to be a leader right now, and I appreciate that you are doing your best and looking at all the facts. And leadership requires making difficult decisions for the greater good. I know it's hard to tell kids they have to go back home when they've been at school, but the reality is safety is much more important. Safety is more important and more urgent than any learning loss, and it really should be the primary consideration for your decision. The risk of any student, parent, or educator dying is real, and it is not worth any reward that will come from opening schools in this environment. So I just ask you to please take our safety into consideration and do the right thing. Thank you.
Next, I have Deb DeBush. Deb DeBush. Hi, Deb.
Hi, good afternoon, President Liu, school board members, Dr. Stowe, and Cabinet. Deborah Tabush, President of the Torrance Teachers Association, 1619 Cravens Avenue. TTA leadership is greatly appreciative that you, the school board, has decided to hold this emergency meeting to discuss how TUSD should move forward with the recommendation from Dr. Ferrer and the Department of Public Health. As president of the Torrance Teachers Association, I am here with the same message of health and safety that TTA leadership has expressed since the onset of COVID-19 in March of 2020. Since the start of the district task force and reopening discussions this summer, the understanding was that all teachers and parents would remain with their choices of distance or blended learning platforms for the remainder of the 2020-21 school year. Unfortunately, the rules have changed. The parents have been given the choice to change between distance and blended learning models due to not feeling comfortable with TUSD's waiver and return to in-person instruction on December 7th and January 4th. Due to the parents' requests, students from across the district have been shuffled into new distance and/or blended learning classes, while some families are having to settle for independent study contracts due to not having any open distance learning spots available. This revolving door does not give consistency to either students or teachers and is not optimal for instruction or learning. With safety being so unstable at this time, this issue will only be exacerbated. As an educator, I cannot deny that having a classroom with in-person instruction is the first step of gaining some sort of new normal and consistency, but this is not the time to remain open. I have been reflecting a lot about the phrasing of risk versus reward being used at many of the school board and district committee meetings. I believe that we should not be putting employees, students, and/or our community at risk to gain a reward. Maybe we need to rethink this phrase. TTA leadership will continue to advocate for the health and safety of TUSD employees, students, and community by recommending that all in-person instruction or contact be paused for at least 3 weeks. In closing, as we move forward, TTA recommends that the school board take a vote on reopening in the midst of this pandemic. This will ensure that today's discussion will be on the record. Thank you for your consideration on these matters.
Next, I have Andrew Schweiberg. Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm a parent of a student at Fern. My daughter's a first grader in the hybrid program, and she was a little bit excited to see her teacher and fellow students, but mostly anxious to go this week, and as we were as well. We left her in this model assuming it would begin when it was reasonably safe to do so. But I've been concerned seeing the spike in numbers in the last several weeks due to the holidays and people traveling and such. When I read the news of Barbara Ferrer's strong recommendations on Thursday night, we decided to pull our daughter from the class for the day on Friday, and I spoke with her just amazing teacher about our options. Within an hour, we were called by the school that a student in her classroom had had exposure to COVID, a COVID positive case, and the class was canceled for the day, and the class would not be meeting in person for 10 days, and we were told our daughter needed to quarantine for 10 days. The virus is just everywhere right now, and it just seems really unsafe. We would love to keep her in this class if we can, because she just adores her teacher and really needs the kind of positive support that this particular teacher and that class provide. But if we have to, I guess we'll figure out an independent study or do the distance learning option. But it just seems like there needs to be a metric. If the hospital ICU bed count is as serious as it has been, I would suggest that be a minimal consideration. The 15% threshold of ICU beds be one metric, but there seems to be other metrics that need to be in place before the in-person should be considered safe to do so. So I would just urge you all to consider for the TK through first graders to just put that on hold until this current spike is over, because it just seems really unwise to proceed at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Clint Paulson. Go ahead, Mr. Paulson.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Also, I'm appreciative of this opportunity to speak to the school board. Sorry, my phone just rang. So I understand these are very difficult times and a lot of difficult choices need to be made. I have 2 high school students, 2 middle school students. Both my high schoolers have been participating in the conditioning programs. And, it's difficult to speak in 3 minutes to this very complicated topic of COVID, but I would just say that there's a lot of studies and other things out there if you want to look, that suicide rates, depression rates, anxiety rates among teens are at all-time highs, trending upward. And when we talk about health and safety, mental health needs to be a part of that conversation. And I honestly think, and I've heard from many different participants, parents that have referred to some of these conditioning programs as a lifeline for their student. And I absolutely believe that's true. In one of my volunteer capacities, I run the AYSO Region 14 soccer program. I was very, very pleased when TUSD opted to support our program over in November, December months. And I can tell you, I've heard from many participants, and most of our participants are elementary school age children and their parents. Again, refer to these opportunity just to get out and get some conditioning outside is a lifeline for their kids. And so I'm not going to comment on whether school should be open or not. I think that's more complicated a decision. But I hope that there's strong consideration made to at least allow outdoor conditioning programs to continue for these youth who absolutely need it during this time to maintain their mental health and their physical well-being. So I really hope that there'll be some consideration, at least to allow those programs to continue. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Next, I have Karen Morgan.
Hi, my name is Karen, and my son attends the transition program at Hamilton Adult School. He has not been able to return to school since the closure. It was my understanding from statements that Gavin Newsom made that IEP students were able to return to work, to school and work, of course, with protocols, blah, blah, blah. Some of the students in his class have been able to return to class, as well as his teacher has returned to class. My son has not, along with other students, of course. I'm wondering why. Why was my son not, why were the other students prioritized above my son, who does have an IEP? So he does obviously have learning disabilities. He is not learning over Zoom. It is a very difficult process for him, being a special needs student. He has been and continues to be harmed by this process of not being in the classroom. He has a lot of anxiety, is angry, and has frequent meltdowns. He is asked to talk with the school counselor on several occasions, which She is obliged. She's been wonderful. She has also started weekly group counseling sessions and also a weekly group lunch program for the kids. So the counseling session is more of kids getting like therapy as far as getting, you know, help. She's helping them with their anxiety and things like that. The lunch program is more of a social networking so the kids can stay in touch. I really think that says a lot about how these kids are being harmed by this process. They really need to be connected and be back in the classroom. Special needs students especially have issues with learning in the first place. They learn by facial expressions. They learn by being in contact with people. They're very social people. They need to be doing things, and they are not allowed to be in contact with anybody at this point, except for, like I said, certain students have been allowed back in the classroom. My son is not one of them, and I really need to know why that is. He really needs to be back in the classroom. There are other rooms on the Hamilton Adult School campus besides the school classrooms that can be utilized in separating the students and the teachers in order for them to hold classes. They have the cafeteria as well as several mobile units on the campus that they do utilize for different activities during a normal school year. So I just want to know if you guys are taking that into consideration as far as helping them to return to campus. Are you going to be utilizing those buildings, and why not if you aren't? Because I really feel that that would be a great asset as far as getting the kids back. It will provide the distance that they need, and their group as a whole is a small group. I do not know the exact number on campus, but they're only in 4 classrooms, so it is a small number.
Dr. Stowe, this is something, because it's a personal student issue, you can have someone from special ed offline, talk offline with this parent later, yes?
Yes. Probably
That
Dr.
would be wonderful. I would really appreciate that, because that was another point I wanted to make, was that information has been really lacking as far as getting any information to us parents as far as what is happening with our students. I haven't received anything. Every time I try and reach out.
We did reach our 3 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next I have Beth Freed. Go ahead, Ms. Freed.
Yes, thank you very much. My name's Beth Freed. I'm a teacher in our special ed department. Just very briefly, I wanted to say, due to the surge of COVID-19 in Los Angeles County, I urge you to close all the classes in TUSD. It's illogical to continue any in-person instruction at this time with the ICUs full, etc. And we need to include the special education classes in this closure too. Many of our students are unable to wear masks or social distance. This makes an unsafe working condition for the teachers and paraeducators. COVID cases have already been identified in these classes, and the spread needs to stop. Please value these employees' lives and the lives of the students and everyone's families by closing all classes to in-person learning. Thank you.
Next, I have Teresa Lavelle. You can unmute yourself, Ms. Lavelle.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I filled out the form properly. Okay, so I just wanted to say that I am a blended teacher at Adenza Elementary, and I am also asking that you follow the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health's recommendations to close the school through January. Yesterday, over 300 people in Los Angeles County died of COVID, and our hospitals are at capacity. In-person learning is hardly a reward if families and teachers are spreading the virus and getting sick. You and our school board were elected to lead our district and make thoughtful and well-informed decisions for our school community. Please be an example of what good leaders do. Take responsibility, have empathy, and make hard decisions. I know that many students and families will be disappointed, but you must set an example to do what is right, not only for the TUSD community, but for the larger Los Angeles County community, hospitals, and essential workers that are facing the hardships of this deadly virus. I just want to reiterate that please delay in person at our TUSD schools till the end of January. Thank you.
I have, I believe, one more. There's an Aaron. Is that Aaron I'm not sure if I've got
Yes, it's Aaron M.
Okay. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thank you. So I'm a parent of a first and a third grader at Seaside Elementary School. And from a parent's perspective, I'm requesting that in-person learning continues for our most at need students, which is our special needs students, our kindergartners, and our first graders. When we consider the current data that's shown on the dashboard, the risk is really minimal. Our numbers currently on campus are very small. And we're showing across TUSD that the numbers are very small with, I believe there was only one student yesterday with COVID and very little staff members. So I think the benefits that our students are seeing being in classroom this week was the first week that my first grade son has been able to be in the classroom all year. And he came home and said it was like the greatest week he's ever had. To be able to have that experience for him just means a lot. My kids also attend the YMCA, and the YMCA has been leading in-person small classrooms all school year with no issues. And when you look that they are basically doing this on campus, and they have been a model of what can happen right on all of our campuses, I think that's also something we should take into consideration, that spreading hasn't been an issue. Those are adults in these rooms with these students of pods of 10 or less, and it's been successful. So I'm asking that we please keep it open for these students. And I think we should just postpone layering on and adding additional students until after January and the numbers get better in the broader LA County.
Thank you. I do have another. Ryan Rasson. Did I lose you, Ryan? Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. Now we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I had dialed in as well. Sorry. Okay. Listen, I'll be quick. I know. I can't believe how hard your jobs are. And here on a Saturday, a beautiful Saturday, you're serving our community. Bless you. So grateful for you. Also, I am so grateful for our first graders teacher, Karen Elder at Riviera. She's amazing. So many of the teachers who are teaching with PPE and following the safety protocols are just astounding. Even Amy Sayers, for example, at Richardson, who's teaching on Zoom, she's just phenomenal. There's so many great teachers there. And I know that this decision is on you and it's going to weigh heavy, and I'm sorry, and it's painful. And the thing about our county's health director recommendation is it's a recommendation precisely because of all the things that are not being said that you now unfortunately have to consider. And there's so much not being said about our emotional well-being of our children. I have a first grader who went back and he was jubilant. There was such joy. We've had to get a counselor too to help him with anger, like others have said. There's also just no other physicians and other scientists like the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, are saying that mental health issues in pediatric emergency visits have jumped 31% over the past year. And real doctors, medical doctors, like Dr. George Rutherford at UCSF, are saying we need to do everything possible to get schools reopened. If it means jumping teachers to the front of the line for vaccines, fine. But even if that happens, what I'm worried about is that for those that are nervous, it's never going to be enough. Look at what the CTA spokesperson said this week. Remember, quote, right now, there's no research evidence that the vaccine alone eliminates or reduces transmissions or reduces illness. So for those that need to choose Packet's independent study, distance learning, I say go with God and bless you. And I hope you feel confident and good. But I'm afraid that nothing's going to be good enough for them. And for those of us who are seeing our children, even 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, suffer emotionally, suffer psychologically, suffer for however you measure social health and whether or not they're doing okay. It's those questions aren't being asked. That data is not being provided. The county lines are arbitrary. That geographic thing is just there. That's why you have to make this tough decision for our community. Bless you. May God bless you. I hope you make the right decision. So many parents are thankful for you. That's all.
And President Liu, that
Is that it?
That is it.
Is that all, everybody? That's great. Thank you all for the to the public for all your input, your oral comments here, and your emails that have been sent to us. I understand the tremendous burden that everyone have had in having our students learn solely through distance learning. We know that students, particularly young students, experience learning loss without in-person classroom instruction. That is one reason I supported opening our schools physically from TK to 1st grade and to apply for the waiver for in-person instruction of 2nd graders. We were allowed to do so, and so we did. Although I am greatly concerned about students' mental and social health, along with their academic progress, I am not a doctor or a virologist. When the head of the LA County Department of Public Health now, quote unquote, strongly recommends that we suspend in-person student instruction for all grades, I believe we cannot ignore that recommendation. I trust healthcare professionals, and I believe we should follow the intent of the memo that was sent to us yesterday. Before I ask a few questions to our staff to confirm, I will let my fellow board members first speak. Is there anybody who's interested in speaking up or asking any questions of the staff? If so, raise your hand. I see Dr. Gerson. Would you like to proceed?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you to all of the speakers. We also received, or at least I received, so many emails that I was just trying, even up until the meeting time, was trying to read as many of them as I can. So I can't even count at this time and tell you what the number was. And I want to be fair to all the perspectives and to convey that I have considered and understand each of the major points of view as I just touch upon a few things. First of all, I received a lot of emails because of the LA Times article. You know, the LA Times, his health director calls for hard 3-week school shutdown in LA County amid deadly COVID surge, and rushed to print so fast he didn't even hit the spell grammar check. And because I got so many emails on that, I was on the call, I kind of want to bridge the gap between what was said in the article. As Mr. Rozon was indicating, you know, Dr. Ferrer did give data, and I kind of want to put that together. And I also want to hit on the other side of the perspective as well. So, you know, the article held on to one quote. I'm strongly recommending that schools not reopen for in-person instruction. Ferrer said on a call with school leaders, I'm recommending this for 3 weeks until the end of January. And he goes on to say, in the taped call, Ferrer prepared school leaders for the bad news by outlining the grim situation in LA County. Dr. Ferrer always starts the meetings the same way. Of course, first she says this meeting is not intended for the media and all comments are off the record, because oftentimes this turns into a working meeting. She does a presentation and she always starts with county statistics and she gives us the big picture. And then she gets into school statistics. And I noticed that the author of this article ignored all of the school statistics. And so I want to acknowledge all of the people who are looking at the research and share with you what Dr. Ferrer said before her recommendation, because I think it's also important that everyone understands that Dr. Ferrer has been a huge, huge supporter for public education. I think she's the loudest voice in the community as far as getting us back against the supervisors even. It's the governor and the county supervisors who have pushed us back. I think Dr. Ferrer would have had us back in the fall for all elementary blended students if she were solely in control of the situation, but so many situations get above her. So she said there are 1,900 school sites open for instruction. 8 schools that are considered either elementary schools or K-12 private schools have had child-adult spread cases where that they would be considered linked in some way. That's 0.4% of all the schools in LA County. Of all the schools that have had outbreaks, she said 73 schools. That's 3.8% of the schools. And she said that those schools with outbreaks are happening in the following most common areas: kitchens, custodians, meal distribution, transportation, and break rooms. The outbreaks involving students were related to youth sports and conditioning activities. The current case count is 1,879 staff to 451 students that have reported positive cases have come to school, and that's across the whole county. So in November, the ratio of adult to student positive cases was 3-to-1. With the most recent numbers, it's now approaching 4.2 adults bringing a positive case for every student. And so I share that because Dr. Ferrer starts with that school data, because she wants us to know, and she complimented schools multiple times throughout the call on how they're doing it right and how they are not the source of community spread, which she has repeated for, in every meeting for the last couple of months at least. Back in April, she was defining low risk and medium risk environments and explaining how grocery stores were low risk and schools were medium risk, and has spent months working with us in our meetings as well as separate meetings with all the superintendents of LA County, and having her staff so accessible to help schools reach a point where now it is minimal risk in the classroom. We are now safer than going to the grocery store. And that is because Dr. Ferrer has been so accessible and so committed and has advocated for us. And so everyone who's written to me who said, look at the data, look at the statistics, the county's not giving it to you, I want to tell you, yes, absolutely, the county is giving it. And Dr. Ferrer multiple times is expressing her appreciation and acknowledges it. And she, just like I, has a very deep heart and felt bad that she had to come to this point where now she's asking the last group that she wanted to ask to get on board and help her out with this larger community issue. Another thing that the author of that article wrote, one school leader asked why Ferrer did not simply order schools to close. She said such an order would make it easier to explain to parents. Ferrer replied that the county is trying to remain consistent with the state's preferred regional approach. It wasn't clear whether she was referring to less restrictive approaches, blah, 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 blah. Having been in at least 40 meetings with Dr. Ferrer since March, and listening to what's going on, I can tell you that the message she was conveying was an asking and a pleading, even though the language she was using, you couldn't hear the tone. And it's because of a very strong religious private school network. We even have them here in the South Bay who are violating the intent. And Dr. Ferrer has come out and said, you are violating the intent willingly of DPH's guidance. They file for childcare, but they run school. And so a lot of what she's doing in the meeting is also trying to garner support from this network that is openly defying her, and also taking her to court saying, we're religious, it's our First Amendment, we don't have to listen to you. And so she's also been fighting that battle. And some of the people who've come on over the months, it's very frustrating that us as electeds have come out in our Q&As and have to say, look, this is a professional working meeting. Please be professional. Don't bring in outside things like we're not talking about abortion and views on abortion, for example. So there is that larger picture of a reporter coming out and writing about, you know, picking on little comments that Dr. Ferrer is giving and not the whole picture. Now, I'd also told people that I really needed to see what she was going to write, because what they spend so much time in the detail of what they write. And I think in the meeting, she was a little more open on special education and services and what she said. You know, that she, you know, I strongly recommend that schools not open for 3 weeks except for students who need specialized instructions. But when you get to read the memo, which now the district has given everyone to see, it's much more specific and it's more thought out. And it's the last sentence in the second paragraph that really gets to the heart of it, which is this recommendation for schools is intended to support this strategy, this bigger strategy. You know, when she tried to close restaurants because of DPH data that she shared with us, you know, there were city councils who opposed her, and she did not receive a lot of support widely amongst the elected city council members across the county. And she's really asking us at this juncture where hospitals are reaching, you know, some have already reached their breaking point, some are approaching it. And now within the last 48 hours, the governor has said that he wants to send people down to the county to reshuffle patients, you know, send more patients from into the city to the west side, to the South Bay. That, you know, that we got a message from Torrance Memorial within the last 48 hours that yes, they're in contingency, but they're still doing well enough that they can have the outpatient procedures. But if the governor comes down and messes with things as he has in the past, that could change in our local area. And you know, Los Angeles County DPH was operating with around 600 open cases at a time. Right now they have 1,600 open cases where they're doing contact tracing. So this is really a plea for her that we as elected school board members join with her and support the greater initiative to support and help the community. And obviously, you know, I respect her so much and I can see the anguish. One school board member had said during the Q&A, you know, every time I think my job is just too hard, I think about your job, Dr. Ferrer, and that yours is harder. And Dr. Ferrer immediately interrupted her and said, no, yours is harder, because she knows that, you know, for those of us who visited schools, I think we've all at this point. And funny story, I went to Seaside with Dr. Stowe, and he was at the back door and I was at the front door, and we're looking at this kindergarten class. And as I'm walking away, one of the kids asked the teacher, why is the president here? And I hope he was confusing me with Mrs. Liu as opposed to another president, but the reason why the reason why I go is because I want those faces in my mind, because those are the people who I serve most. And this decision that I want to follow the direction of Dr. Ferrer is because I want to be a good example to them and service the greater community, even though I know that in this short period, it might be better for that individual child to be with that teacher in that classroom, but it's not the best choice for our community as a whole. And so it is heavy. It's a very heavy heart. It's a very difficult struggle, because I always ask what's best for kids. And my answer right now is to do what's best for the community, and not all those wonderful faces that I was exchanging waves with. And so, to give you what you wanted, the 6 points, I think we should follow Dr. Ferrer's direction and push off TK through 1 until February 1st. The self-contained special ed was explained to us that you've already tried to knock it down to only the most severe. So it seems like that is in line with what Dr. Ferrer is already asking. Assessments, necessary assessments are already something that she's said can continue. The academic support cohorts, honestly, that we're talking about homeless students who can't access classes virtually. And this is the only place where they can access their classes. So I think that is well within Dr. Ferrer's direction, that if they can learn remotely, we ask them to learn remotely, but if they can't, we still need to support them. Athletic conditioning was one of the 2 areas where she specifically mentioned that youth sports, and there've been so many examples, whether it was the 12 boys at one school who went to a baseball tournament and brought it back here in LA County, a volleyball team in San Diego County, in Northern California, was it 83 people in the end who got COVID by going to a youth basketball tournament. So youth sports have been an issue, and that's just the ones I know within California. I've read a lot about ones in other states. But because athletic conditioning was specifically mentioned by Dr. Ferrer as one of the 2 areas where students are currently doing it, I know 2 callers were asking, but again, I'm just listening to Dr. Ferrer, and so I am asking the district to discontinue those for the 3 weeks. It's interesting that Mrs. Lee brought up one of the other very important points that 2 months ago, I read an article about the unintended consequences of opening schools. Schools are one of the things seem most normal, and that when children are going to school, parents and others start to go, well, this is also super normal, and make an exception. And Mrs. Lee was describing it very well and matched what I was reading in that article. And even though Dr. Ferrer has never specifically talked about that, I think that also supports her view. And finally, you asked about the PSAT. As you said, that's a 1-day, it's a special assessment. It can't be done online. I think Dr. Ferrer would be, as long as we're taking all the protocols, I think Dr. Ferrer would support that if I had to put myself in that position after all the phone calls with her. So that's my advice and asks to the board on the 6 points that you've asked for. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Dr. Gerson, for stating all that at least some of us really feel. Is there any other board members interested in asking staff questions or want to make some statements?
Just comment on Dr. Gerson. Dr. Gerson, I think you have to be careful about making assumptions of what Dr. Ferrer is thinking. I think that I've been on those phone calls as well, just as you are. I think it's an overly misrepresentation of what you argue about pleasing the religious schools, about her making her decisions. I think it's a big overreach. And I think it's completely inappropriate for even to make that comment, because you're making an implied assertion of what she's thinking without even knowing. So I think that is a complete overstep, number one. Number two is that, with Dr. Ferrer, when you're talking about how she is always been about pro schools, I would have to radically disagree with you on that too. So my thing is, when we talk about Dr. Ferrer, let's just talk about the facts. Without trying to assume why she does or what she does, because I think that we are speaking on her behalf, which is not our right. It is for us simply to deal with the facts. And that's what I would like to rather do than to make that assumption and to say that this is what she would do, what she was thinking, or I don't know what she would do. I don't know what she's thinking, to be honest, because her logic and her thinking is all over the place. One of the biggest concerns that I've been very shocked by this whole situation is that no one has brought up the fact, since she's brought it, I'm gonna use your words, Dr. Gerson, the word strategy, the bigger strategy, right? Well, the bigger strategy is to reduce the number of people getting COVID, to shut down the malls, shut down retail, shut it all down. Why target schools and not the malls, not retail, right? Where we know, right, you brought it up, break rooms, cafeterias, right? Even LA Times had an article last month about how malls have been a big contributor to outbreaks, how there have been malls like South Bay Galleria had stores had to close down, Glendale Galleria had stores closed down. Obviously, retail has been a big factor of perhaps the spread. We've seen Best Buy shut down in Burbank. Why? Because of outbreaks. And yet we have all these outbreaks in retail, but hey, you know what? We'll still keep them open. But we'll shut down schools. Why? Because our hospitals are going crazy. The ICU beds are filled. But you know what? Let's keep those open, but let's shut down schools. What is the strategy? I don't get the consistent strategy. This is why when we talk about Dr. Farrar's recommendation, to me, it is absolutely arbitrary. For her to say 3 weeks, right, is arbitrary, right? Give me some numbers. Give me a number that says, 20,000, 25,000, 10,000 hospitalization, 15% ICUs. Give me something, not just, well, let's just shut it down for 3 weeks. That's it. That was the recommendation. Hey guys, you know what? We're going to shut it down for 3 weeks. Why? Is the schools going crazy? Are we numbers jumping through the roof in schools? Like, is infection going crazy at schools? Do we see kids getting hospitalized in schools? Nothing. You know what? We're just doing part of your word, bigger strategy, right? That's why we're going to shut down schools. Just 3 weeks. There's no rhyme or reason. Obviously we know the numbers are going up, right? But the numbers that we're seeing right now here in January are the same numbers that we've been seeing at the end of in the middle of December too. It's not like they increased like tremendously, right? I broke it all down on all the daily reports, right? When we look at the numbers, right, they've all been pretty much about 18,000, 16,000, 18,000 in December too. So it's not like it's going through the roof. It's still just been consistent. Yet they're asking us to shut down our schools, even though we have demonstrated, like you said, Dr. Gerson, which she does do, where she goes over the school facts. She does talk about how safe it is and how the schools have done an excellent job, right? We've done our job. We've done our protocol. We've shut down schools for the past 9 months, right? We've done all that we can, but the numbers keep going up and down every which way around, right? Not because of schools, but because of people's behavior, right? That's something that we cannot control. But what I can control is what we do at our school to the best of our ability, right? Yeah, we have to work with our community. We have to trust the parents, right? That they will do the right thing, right? That people who are symptomatic with COVID, they're not going to send their kids to school. You know why? Because their kids are going to be sick as a dog, right? That ain't going to happen, right? So we have to be worried about the asymptomatic patients, right? And I get that. And I get the fact that the numbers are out of control. But I want us to understand, right, is that this makes no sense to me because of the fact that, hey, if the numbers are this out of control, then shut retail down. Shut everything down for 3 months. Now, here's the thing. Dr. Farrar has also stated that she has never shut down schools. She's never shut down. That's her thing. She has said, I have never shut down schools. She said, you guys are the one who shut down the schools. And I was absolutely appalled because I'm thinking, no, you give us no choice but to shut it down. Here's the thing, your understanding is maybe she wants to placate the religious right about, whatever. That's why, we have to do, she's in the situation that she's in. Or could it be because she doesn't want to be the one who said that, hey, I'm the one who shut down schools. Maybe she doesn't want that burden. She doesn't want that sense of decision-making ability. I don't know. I'm not going to speak on her behalf, right? But she's asking us, okay, based upon her recommendation, to shut down schools for 3 weeks. And this is why when you're asking us to follow LA County Department of Public Health protocols, I am following the protocols. The school order, the stay-at-home order is still there. Schools are still allowed to open. It's her recommendation, right? As the LA County DPH head person. But is that reflective of LA County Department of Public Health? Or is it her recommendation? It's not the order of the county, it's her recommendation. An individual, one doctor, right, to make that recommendation. And these are the things that I think we all have to consider, because here we are making a decision for our students, right? But yet our malls are open, our retail is open, things are still open, people are still going to work, people are still gathering in workplaces. Yet we're shutting down schools, even though school has demonstrated to be the safest place to be. That's where I don't understand the logic. I don't understand what the connecting points are. That's where my frustration lies, I think, here. Is that I'm just trying to understand what is the reason. Give me some metric, give me some numbers, give me some guidance. But just don't say shut it down for 3 weeks. That's what she said, basically, right? When you look at the thing, we read the memo, we all read the memo, right? It's obviously because there's a surge. Well, my thing is, if there's a surge, then why not shut down retail? Why not shut down the malls? Why not just shut everything down? It is completely, to me, unfair that she's asking us where we've done all that we can. And by the way, I really want to applaud all our teachers, all our schools for an amazing and wonderful job that they have done. I was so proud that we opened up this week and we did it well. To hear the comments, to hear the people who have shown us our gratitude, the thrill of the students. And I know, again, I'm not underestimating the risk. Trust me, I know the risk is real, absolutely real. More real than you guys, all of you guys wouldn't even know that I know how real this risk is. COVID is no joke. It is no joke at all. And I want you to understand that I fully understand that in more ways than maybe majority of you would understand. And because of it, I still believe, though, that we still should be able to open up our schools. Because again, I don't see what changed. I don't understand what changed for her to make this decision out of nowhere, without giving any more guidance, any more numbers, any more risks that were there in that manner. So I think for me, obviously, I don't believe that this recommendation is a good one. Now, with all that being said, like Dr. Lee, like Betty said, is that I can't say I'm a doctor. And up to this point, we have always said we will follow LA County Department of Public Health. And so if this is the recommendation of LA County Department of Public Health, and not just her recommendation, then I don't think we have a choice. Because this has been our message all along. And I think we have to be consistent with our message, even though I think that message is incorrect. I feel like we have no choice. No matter how much it pains me to say that, then we have no choice. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Vice President Han.
President Liu, I don't want to debate. I just do want to say one thing.
Sure, go ahead.
In Thursday's meeting, and part of the reason why I feel I can draw this conclusion that I did, that I was accused of being perhaps incorrect on, is Dr. Ferrer specifically made reference, and I'm sorry I didn't bring up the transcript because I typed copiously while she's talking, is that when asked why not, the directive, it's that some schools are ignoring, DPH protocols completely, and others are suing me or suing the department. And so that is common knowledge on where the lawsuits are coming from. So I just wanted to touch on that. I'm sorry. Thank you. Let someone else speak.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gerson. If anybody else wishes to speak, you can just raise your hand. Dr. Mohammed, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, President Liu, and I appreciate my colleagues for sharing some thoughts. For me, this has definitely been a very, very difficult, decision, and just kind of looking at all the different things. On one hand, all of us are definitely caring for our students, and I think we all understand and agree that it's best for them to be in class, including myself. On the other hand, we're contemplating the responsibility that we all have to ensure everyone's safety, students, staff, and everyone that touches our campus. I've received a lot of input from parents, staff, community members on both sides of the issue. I've tried to personally acknowledge everyone's emails that I've received. And if I haven't, it's probably because I got it too late or it's still in my draft, but you'll definitely hear back. So thank you so much for reaching out. I do appreciate that. Yeah, I've always been a little bit, caution, even in December. I know when we had the meeting, we were on track to bringing back students, and it's always good to be in those kinds of conversations when we're opening schools and bringing back kids. And that's, I think, that's the right way to go. But I did allude to the fact that I think the context in which we made the decision in November were, our case numbers were very low per day, especially even in Torrance, versus, the surge that's starting to happen Thanksgiving time and then leading into December. But still, I was very hopeful that, we would see things improve over the 2-week holiday, or 2 week, over the winter break. And, I was very confident and still am in our protocols. Received a lot of good feedback that, they're working, and they've really probably helped a lot in preventing many more people getting it. So I do commend staff and teachers and everybody in doing such a great job in following that. I think that's probably helped us out in keeping our cases lower. Otherwise, they could have been even a lot higher. But unfortunately, we're observing a very high number of cases. And what also concerns me is the hospitalization rate. I think we run risks, even in Torrance. I remember back in October, leading up to November, our cases were very, very, very low per day, as opposed to what they are now. And I think that impacts a lot of our students, our parents, families, and including our staff. And so I really believe that it's a very, very difficult decision, a little torn by it, but I think we have to consider the Department of Public Health's recommendation as we move forward. I do lean that way, and I would urge my colleagues to also follow the recommendation as well. And that's all I have, President Liu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed.
I'd like to speak.
Ms. Park,
well.
yes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much to all of the other board members who shared such thoughtful comments. I definitely resonated with a lot of what everyone was saying. I also do not, I think that our schools and our education should be our societal priority, and that I agree with Vice President Han's comments that it doesn't make sense to me that the adults and people who are supposed to be the responsible figures in our community made decisions that our children, our students have to suffer the consequences of. And so that is frustrating, but what can you do, right? I think that the 3 weeks was not an arbitrary date for me. From some of the projections that I've seen, most recently from the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation, I believe, at the University of Washington, they're expecting a peak for infections at 135,800, and this would be in the state of California, new infections in January 27th, and the projections are also for peak mortality for February 9th with 652 deaths. And it looks like their projections are on the lower end of what we're actually seeing, and their data is from 2 weeks ago. And so I think until the end of January is reflecting the increased risk that our community, that the county is going into. And so I just wanted to state that I had the opportunity to visit some of the elementary schools and see how our TK through first graders were adapting to in-person instruction. And what I saw, I felt like our staff at our schools were doing an excellent job, that the students, I know that a lot of folks, when they think about schools reopening, may be thinking of the pictures from high schools in Georgia, or just sort of mass chaos and you can't control the kids. And that is not the scene, those are not the scenes that I saw at all. All of the young students were respecting social distancing and health protocols better than most of the adults I've seen around. And so I just definitely wanted to highlight that at some point when we bring back our TK through first graders, or if whatever the decision of the board ends up being, that the level of adherence and safety that I observed made me feel quite comfortable. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about the exact text of the recommendation, really calling out our students with highest needs and the necessary services. And so with that, for our self-contained special ed students and our academic support cohorts, you have to weigh the costs, right? There are going to be costs either way, whether it's the cost to safety in terms of health and safety with bringing students back, but there are also, as many of our community members who called in and our board members have mentioned, there are costs to students' education, to their mental, emotional health, and the costs for these groups, it's higher. And so with that, I do believe that we should continue to keep our self-contained special ed and academic support cohorts and make sure that, and that's going to make sure that there are fewer bodies on our campuses, which I hope will lead to feelings of more safety for our students and their families and our educators and staff. And so with that, I did have a question for Tim, for Dr. Stowe, in terms of how, like, if there at some point can be a figure of how many staff we got the number of students who would be served if we kept those particular groups. It would be great to also at some point to get the number of staff and educators who would be on campus as well, and recognizing that the risk, we talk about lower transmission rates for our under 10 population, but that goes up linearly from 10 to 20, the risk of the rate of infection, and for our adults, it's not different. And so I would like to make sure that we are considering that as well. And so when we are talking about we're drawing the distinction when we're talking about our TK through first grade students, and when we're talking about all of the other people, whether these are students who are in the higher, like the older age groups, or the adults on campus, and drawing that distinction clearly.
I don't know if I know Dr. Crumpy and Dr. Liberati do have some numbers as far as folks on campus. I don't know if you want that information now or later.
That would be great to have now. Yes, I just didn't want to cause.
And specifically, I think you're calling on the some of the programs for our more severe special education students. Is that correct?
Yes, the 200 students you mentioned during the presentation.
Okay, Dr. Crumpy, or maybe even Dr. Hall, do you have any information on the number of adults that serve the students in those programs?
We don't have it in total because what we do have right now is the total number of adults per school site. So we hadn't disaggregated, but we did disaggregate quickly, anticipating this question for one site, just to kind of do the simple math. And so at one of our elementary schools that has a number of classes, they have 51 employees at the school normally on a daily basis, but 30 of those are working in that special education program. So just kind of mathematically looking at that. So quite a few, but we can work on disaggregating the total staff number and get that to you. We just don't have it site by site at this time.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I sprung it on you, so completely understandable, which is why I'm happy with receiving the numbers later.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, and I also do want to emphasize that I don't think I agree with Vice President Han, our school, and Board Member Gerson, that our schools are not driving community transmission. I do not believe that. I do agree that if we want people to change their behavior, actually stay at home, that this is messaging that needs to happen. But when rates go down, I think that our campuses should reopen as soon as possible for our younger students particularly, and that the rest of, whether it's retail, whether it's whatever else it may be, those can wait, and our school should be the first in our community to welcome students back and make sure that they're getting the education they deserve.
Thank you, Ms. Park. Thank you. You actually asked a question that I had already, but I also have another question. Special Education Director Lisa Hall, thank you very much for attending our meeting today. I see that we have 204 students who are in special education that are on campus right now. Around how many special education students do we have in total in our district?
Just under
approximately.
3,000. Just under 3,000.
So under 3,000. So the
Just under.
204 is a very small percentage of that whole special education population. I understand earlier, Dr. Stowe has said that these are the more severe cases. Are there services, the services that they receive, can they be effectively carried out online also, like the rest of the special education students?
So that's partly why we had them return before other students returned, is that they were having challenges accessing their services remotely. So we have brought them back for the services that they cannot access remotely through the virtual platforms. So I guess the answer to that is no.
Okay, great. I just want to confirm that. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, go ahead.
So my question again, so obviously, Jasmine, you're right. We all agree that, when it's safe for our kids to come back, they have to come back. And I think we all agree that we know that there's not transmission to schools and all that. Here's the issue that I have here is that let's say 3 weeks is up and the numbers are still at 18,000 infections. February 1st, 18,000 infection, 8,000 hospitalization. Are we going to bring our kids back? 16,000, 6,000 in hospitalizations, 14,000, 3,000 hospitalization. I'm kind of curious as a board, right? Because we're assuming 3 weeks, then we should be able to bring our kids back. Based upon what? On what number? What infection number is that going to look like? 18,000? Let's say February 1st, our infections are still at 18,000 per cases, and we're still at 8,000 hospitalizations. Are we okay to bring our kids back on February 1st? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So that was what I was saying. So before any other, so there are considerations for whether it's dining, whether it's anything else that has been closed to reopen. I'm saying that there will be a particular timeline and there will be advocates for open. My timeline is that before you reopen in-person dining, make sure we can bring our students back. And so that would be my metric in terms of when to bring our students back.
Dr. Gerson?
On December 30th, Governor Newsom did a presentation. If we were to use the state's metric is 28 per 100,000 is his metric. I don't know what the county's metric is going to be. They didn't explain that to us. But of course, I agree with everyone that as soon as, as soon as reasonable, we want students in the classroom. I think all of us want the students who want to be in the classroom to be in the classroom. Mrs. Liu, so, and I know that this irks Dr. Stowe every time this happens, but there are two questions I'd like to ask that weren't exactly 6 bullet points, but I think are applicable that I'd like to ask. The first thing is in the data that we were given by public health, the greatest teacher outbreak reported was a 6 teacher outbreak, and it occurred because they were sharing air in the break room, not adhering to the protocols. I didn't know, we've never been told how break rooms are monitored or cordoned off. I didn't know if they were pulling out the yellow caution tape and closing those off. But that's an area that I want to ask because teachers will still, under Dr. Ferrer's recommendation, that teachers can still come on and do their distance instruction. But knowing that this is an area of concern, what are we doing about that? And knowing that kitchens and food distribution is another high area, I wanted to ask Dr. Stowe about how kitchens were operating, if we had extra HEPA filter machines, if any had been dispatched to those. So I was hoping he could answer those 2 questions.
Sure. I will actually ask Dr. Butler to respond to both of those because they've been discussed recently.
Thank you. So break rooms we did take on, I'm going to say off the top of my head, I think it was at the beginning of this week, if I remember right, that we had the same kind of rising concern about it, and hearing about DPH again and limiting travel. So we did put out a memo to all principals. We have the support of M&O working with any principal that needs it to either remove furniture, block off spaces, signage posted. We put out 4 different signs that a variety of situations they can be used, the different ones. So we are monitoring break rooms much more closely than we were, say, a month ago, just given what we have seen as well. So thank you for bringing that up. And that's one of the things we've been trying to monitor. In terms of food service, we haven't been seeing any major issues, obviously, with transmission and what we're doing back and forth, but we got kind of 2 things going on. One is bulk food service, which is more about packaging and putting items together. It's not about heating and preparing in the same way. So that's what we're able to do for the wider community as a whole. And then we have been doing some serving for students as they have returned for the enrichment cohorts that we've been working on now, TKK1. And HEPA filters are available completely. I don't remember food services asking for those specifically, but I'll look into that a little bit more. But everything that I've worked with Kathleen Cole, she and her crew are incredible with food services. They've been delivering 30,000 meals a week and doing it just seamlessly. The only thing that we've been seeing on that one is just because we are seeing absences in general for people currently, and especially in some of our part-time roles, it's been harder to keep people here. We are adjusting our food service deliveries to be at the middle school and the high schools. Off the top of my head, I think we're starting at the end of January. And the reasoning behind that is just less food service staff are available every day, not again because of COVID that we're seeing here, but for whatever the circumstances are, part-time jobs are harder to keep people coming. And we've seen that in food services specifically. So we'll adjust a little bit, but we'll still be able to serve everybody that we have been, just at fewer locations. But so far, so good on that.
Dr. Han, Vice President Han, feel free.
But I want to go back to my original question, though. Again, on February 1st, if Dr. Farrar does not extend her order, will our kids come back? The cohorts from TK1. If there is no continuance of the order of her recommendation, will our kids be allowed to come back on February 1st?
Thank you for repeating the question, Vice President Han. The way I feel about this is that, like our last board meeting, the issue was when we should bring back second graders. And we were waiting to see if, we wanted to wait and see if the cohort number goes from 14 to 16. But I have also proposed that in case the cohort numbers don't change to the benefit of our students, I would like to have a backup date. And back then it was proposed to be, I believe, beginning of February when those other kids will get to come in. In this case, I believe that the current recommendation from the department is only for 3 weeks. Unless, and this is how I feel, I mean, unless the Department of Public Health again extends that 3 weeks to another week, 2 more weeks, 10 more months, whatever it be, I think that we should go ahead and have the students go back on February 1st, absent an extra order from the Department of Public Health. I don't know if all of you concur, but that's how I feel about this, that we need that backup date.
I agree with you, Betty.
Great, thank you. I see a thumbs up from Dr. Gerson. Thank you, Dr. Han. Dr. Mohammed, oh, thumbs up, I see. Okay, great.
And Mrs. Liu, just if I may, we have a regular scheduled board meeting on the 19th of January. Not sure that we'll really have any more information by that point in time. We do also have a regular scheduled meeting. Well, if the board approves it, it was going to be a recognition only meeting on February 1st, but we have an item on the agenda for the 19th to have the board make that a regular meeting so that we will conduct business at that meeting on February 1st. And then should the board want to, we can always have another special meeting. I know it's not ideal, but we've got those options available. But we will definitely plan for that if that's the direction the board wants to go.
Yes, that would be great, Dr. Stowe. Let's go ahead and do that. But knowing the Department of Public Health, they would probably give out their recommendation memo orders at very last minute. So I don't expect us to have any more directions before our next board meeting on the 19th. Okay, then overall, yes. Ms.
Yes,
Park.
I just want to voice, I don't think that by February 1st, that the concerns in terms of our case count and our mortality rate, like numbers are going to go down significantly enough for this to be a different discussion. So I would actually ask for a later date of mid-February, perhaps after President's Day. Who knows, like, I don't know, I can't look into the future, so I don't know, but based on the projections that we've seen, it doesn't look like by the end of January, February 1st, that it's going to have gone down significantly enough for the community to be weighing different considerations.
I hear you, Ms. Park. Mr. Han?
But I think Dr. Farrar will make that decision. I think that if she feels the same way, I think she would make that decision. But I can't speak on her behalf, but I think that if obviously they're giving 3 weeks just to evaluate everything, and I'll be very surprised if they don't add to this by February 1st. I think that they're just giving themselves 3 weeks. Again, it's a lot easier to, once they shut us down, they got us. Because at that point, they got us where they want us. It's up to them now whenever they want us to open up, right? And so it's a lot easier to shut down than to open up, to be honest. Once you shut us down, then it's a lot, then we're stuck. What can we do? So my thing is, I feel like Dr. Farrar, she gives us 3 weeks, and then she wants to see where it goes in 3 weeks. And I think she's going to give an update, hopefully prior to the 3 weeks is up. And I think, like I said, if they make a directive saying, hey, you got to do another 3 weeks, then we have no choice. Then we continue on for another 3 weeks. But if there is no directive, then I think that we should be able to open up the first.
Dr. Gerson?
So Dr. Ferrer brought someone new to the meeting who was discussing vaccines. And of course, healthcare workers are being vaccinated right now in phase 1A. and the education sector is in phase 1B, tier 1. And so it was said that the goal of LAC-DPH is to get 1A done by the end of the month, and that in February, they would start vaccinating the the education sector, which, teachers, paras, bus drivers, everyone in the education sector could apply. So Dr. Ferrer said she was coming back with a plan in 2 weeks. I would suspect that her advice to us is also going to be impacted by how well their federal partners are providing the vaccines and how well they're reaching their goal of getting through phase 1A by the end of January. So I think there's also that unknown that's going to play into her advice to us.
Great, Dr. Gerson, thank you. I also, like a lot of you, have attended, listened to a lot of phone conference from the Department of Public Health with Dr. Farrar or the other medical personnel there. I think I might be the only one who attended an extra one yesterday, where they really just talked about vaccines and going through the different tiers. Dr. Farrar actually said that although teachers are frontline workers and they should be getting the vaccine, they want to limit it only to those who have actual exposure. For me, I believe all the teachers should get the vaccine instead of only the ones who are physically on school campus. So we're really going to have to see what's going to happen there. And Superintendent Dr. Stowe and I actually talked about this to try to push for them to recognize all teachers as frontline workers, and so be getting that vaccine as soon as possible. I believe it is tier 2 that they believe in February they will be able to administer.
Question.
Dr. Mohammed, oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead, same topic.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question. So I was on the call, I don't know, it was Wednesday, for the vaccine, the State Vaccine Advisory Committee, who has, they've made the tier 1 very clear. What, as far as your understanding is, what can Dr. Ferrer do outside of the state's advisory as far as once people are listed and labeled in that category, how much power does she have in controlling and further breaking down what the state is telling?
You're asking me what her authority is as to what she can do?
I have a lot more understanding of the political structure than I would. So with the advisory committee being put together by California Public Health and advising the governor and setting that sectors, because in their meeting, they said sectors are going to define it. And a bus driver asked a question saying, when do I get vaccinated? And they said, it's not your job title. It's, are you an MTA driver, in which case your transportation, or are you a school bus driver, in which case your education, and you have to know your sector. So if the state is defining that, at how much degree of control will local DPH have to be able to disseminate that further? Because that's, I don't know, in my mind, that's a stretch, but you would know better than I would. And now a question I have to ask more.
Although I might know quite a bit, I don't think I'll be the right person to answer what kind of authority or influence Dr. Ferrer, as head of Department of Public Health, has to decide which groups of people gets to have the vaccine. But from the call yesterday, I can tell you that for phase 1A, they expect it to be done by the end of January, and that goes to the acute care hospital personnel. What we're concerned about is phase 1B, which will happen for about 6 to 8 weeks in the month of February. For tier 1 of 1B, it'll be 75 years and older, and the people who are at risk at work. And in the education sector, all who work in TK to university with the risk of exposure at work. So in other words, if you're teleworking, that's what she said, teleworking, you're not at risk. And so this is the thing, this is the category that Dr. Stowe and I have talked about to try to push for all the teachers to be able to get the vaccine. Another one, just to mention, to complete the tier 1 of phase 1B is childcare providers. And of course, they are at front, in the forefront in being exposed to the vaccine. And to complete it, she finished by talking about tier 2 under phase 1B, which will be age 65 to 74. And then after that, it'll just be going into different age categories. But in terms of your question, back to your question about the authority of Dr. Ferrer, I do not want to guess as to how far her authority extends, because I would not have a foundation there.
Offline, tell me where I go ask those questions, because I do want to advocate for all of our teachers and paras and food services and I want to make sure that education sector that we don't start losing people in our sector. So we'll talk about that offline.
Sure. We definitely, I don't think any of us cabinet members here and all of board members want any of our employees to be, to not be able to get the vaccine. So anybody else have any comments? If not, Dr. Oh, so sorry, Dr.
No,
Mohammed. Yes, please
no
go
problem.
ahead.
Thank you so much
for your patience.
Not a problem. I just wanted to make a couple comments. One is just to emphasize what Vice President Han mentioned about the return and the extension. Provided that we don't have any further extensions from the Department of Public Health, I think it's safe to assume that we should be returning back February 1st, and we should plan accordingly for that. And the second thing is just wanted to get some clarity that between now and the next meeting obviously is 10 days, and that's a pretty good amount of time for us to also maybe have a little reflection on where things go, and that might be a good idea for us to just kind of see where things are headed to, and that might give us a little bit more insight at that time. And third would be on just if I can get some clarity on the assessments, number of assessments that we're probably looking at. Is there any ballpark around that? Because I wasn't sure how many we have that needs to be on campus or on site.
I'm gonna tackle the English learner assessments right now. We have, so fortunately, the state of California worked with us, and we actually have a virtual initial assessment for LPAC that we're able to give. But we're starting to open the window for the annual LPAC, and that has not occurred. And so we're, and nor have we received any reprieve to not give that assessment. That window is quite large, and individual campuses, even last year, we had a number of students that did not take that assessment. For example, at a high school where only 11th graders take the CASP, they were organizing, a May LPAC, because for 9th, 10th, and 12th graders, kind of a thing. If the schedule was going to be disrupted for CASP, they were going to do LPAC. So we are unsure, and that is about 15 to 18% of our students have to take that initial one. Dr. Hall, do you have an estimate on timeline for SPED assessments or what's happening?
In the next 75 days, we have 348 triennial reassessments due, and we have 25 pending initial assessments. And so I would have to dig a little deeper to tell you in what areas the students are being assessed. But in a broad picture, we have 348 triennial reassessments. So those are students who are already eligible, who will be reassessed to determine if they continue to meet eligibility criteria. And we have 25 initial assessments that are outstanding at this time. And that does not necessarily include our past due assessments since March of last year when the initial shutdown occurred.
Ms. Park?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed.
Thank you. Yeah, so these assessments, there are legal requirements and there are deadlines, but with the new order, does there seem to be an indication that there will be accommodations in terms of pushing back deadlines or more flexibility in terms, because I assume that if other districts are remaining absolutely closed or going to be closed, that they are also going to face difficulties administering these assessments. So it would be great to have a benchmark in terms of where we are compared to other districts. And if there is indication that those legal requirements are going to change, what that's going to look like, which I'm sure, like, you know, you're just getting this information now as well, and I'm sure they haven't issued anything officially yet. But
no, I think that's an excellent question. So most of these requirements are federal, and so especially special education, but so is our English learner annual assessment. And so it will take something federally that would give us that reprieve. In special education, I think the only reason that we got a little bit of a reprieve in the spring, and it didn't start immediately on March 13th, it was when the governor actually shut us down. And so without a formal order, and you're right, with this just coming, we haven't received anything. And with the change in administration, we might have a little bit of a delay in that as well. I'm not sure that we have a current U.S. Department or a Secretary of Education at this time. And so with the new, with that transition and then them getting on the page to give us new guidance, it could take, 4 to 6 weeks to see if there would be any guidance. But up to this point, they've been unforgiving for any special education offer of free and appropriate education for students, even while we were closed. So we don't anticipate getting extensions to the timelines. We were even California has written to the United States Department of Ed, pleading and asking for a year reprieve from the CASP assessments. And so again, what we anticipate probably a 4 to 6 week delay before we might get an answer to that one as well. So we will share information as we get it, but up to this point, we don't anticipate, at least in the next 30 days, being able to postpone anything.
I could ask another question sort of in, so for the PSAT as well, I assume that other school districts are having the same issue, and am thinking or hoping that College Board is flexible enough to understand the circumstances. Are you anticipating sort of the same inflexibility on the end of College Board for the PSAT as well?
Yeah, we have not seen anything for the PSAT to either put it online or, like they did for the AP exams last spring. Their flexibility thus far was to actually change. It's usually given in October. And so they moved it to a date for us in January. Is the only thing that we have seen thus far from them. One recommendation, and my opinion only, is that we don't like, or I don't like, I should say, is that there is an alternate way to be a national merit, semifinalist, and that is utilizing SAT exams. And so there's an alternate way if for some reason a student missed a PSAT exam. It's really guidelines in case for, illness or religious reasons, they missed the day of a PSAT test. But SAT tests are not being administered in this state at this time anyway. And for us so Beverly Hills, I will say Beverly Hills is utilizing the alternate national merit semifinalist and encouraging their families to go out of state to take the SAT test so then they can apply. And putting my equity hat on, I don't agree with that, that suggestion or recommendation. I think that really divides our families from families that are willing or able to travel out of state to try to find an SAT exam.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Crumpy, for your answers. It looks to me that if there's nothing further, it looks to me that in light of the DPH's recommendation, our board have decided unanimously pretty much on what action to take next. How do you feel, Superintendent Stowe? Do
Yes.
you have an idea of our board direction right now?
Right. So President Liu, I just want to be clear. So we have a pause until February 1st for TK through 1, as well as high school athletic conditioning, and all of these other programs, the special ed students that are back, the assessments, academic support for some of our high need students, we will minimize in person as much as we can, although most of that minimization has already occurred. But we have the green light to continue those programs, and then also the PSAT is good to go on January 26th, pending some other option from the College Board. Again, all of these programs will continue to operate in compliance with the current health order and with all the safety precautions that we've taken in all of these programs since the beginning of the year, or later in September when we were allowed to do that. So is that the consensus of the board here?
Ms. Park has raised her hand.
I would like to express extreme discomfort with the PSAT administration. I would love to see what it's just because of the age group, the length of time that they will be together. And so it would be great. Could we revisit that on January 19th, on our meeting on January 19th, with an idea of what it's going to look like in terms of all of the precautions?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and in fact, yesterday I spoke with Mr. Egan about some additional safety measures that we could take, and so we'll speak about those, and Dr. Egan, Dr. Crumpy, and myself on Monday.
Great, that sounds good. Anything else from anybody? All right, then we can move on to item number 7, adjournment.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Anyone else want to go home?
No. Okay, well, none. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Great, thank you. None opposed. I see none opposed. Then motion to adjourn is passed. Good night, everyone, and thank you all for being here today.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, guys.